Welcome back to Unmetered, the podcast where we break down the ideas shaping the electrical and manufacturing industries. I'm Ryan Skinner, VP of Growth and Revenue here at Milbank. Today we're talking about AI in manufacturing, but not the hype you hear everywhere. We're digging into what actually is being used, what's working, and just as importantly, what's slowing teams down. I'm joined by a great group: Adrienne Sander, Vice President of Data Analytics and Business Intelligence, Simon Siebert from FridAI, and Thomas Murguia from Keyence. Let's get into it. Adrienne, why did you feel this was the right time to talk about AI in manufacturing, and why this group?
Well, first off, hi Ryan, nice to see you. And thanks for asking that question. Well, I would say we started, last year, where we did a big reorganization here at Milbank, and we created a new department, which you so kindly added into my title. And with that, though, we had the responsibility of looking at AI, how to adopt it. And at that moment, we had to start somewhere. So we put out a roadmap, looked about 1 to 3 years roadmap. AI is constantly changing, so we knew we had to be flexible when we thought in terms of AI. Year one was really around awareness. We had to set up our employee handbook. We had to look at, what platform did we want to adopt. When it looked at large language models, especially, we chose Copilot at that time. Mainly because we're a Microsoft house here at Milbank, and we really like their enterprise data. Security, their Microsoft 365 platform, gave us the security, gave IT the comfort around using large language models, and really just an awareness and training. So that was year one's mission, was going around to every plant, training everybody just to how to use a large language model. And that was really more just for an individual use case. So looking at, how do we write emails better? How do we, rephrase or set tone? It was really just for an individual use case. Year two, which brings us to 2026, we wanted to look more on the automation side. So what could we apply to a process here at Milbank, if it, was in the manufacturing floor, or if it was inside the office space, what could we actually look at and automate in a scalable way that, applied an AI tool. And that's why this podcast, I thought would be an appropriate moment to talk about how we're using AI in manufacturing.
No, I agree. I mean, it's fascinating, and I don't think you can open up Spotify and listen to a podcast without hearing something about AI. It's kind of the definitely the industry buzzword, and everything going into that. So Thomas, what is kind of the background? What is Keyence? How did it become? What kind of background can you give me on that?
Yeah, so Keyence is a global leader in factory automation equipment as well as inspection equipment. We do everything from your basic photo eye sensors, temperature sensors, all the way to vision systems, which is more so my specialty, laser profilers, and then some lab equipment as well. So think handheld CMMs, think microscopes. So we cover a full wheel of automation and inspection products there. For myself, machine vision systems is my specialty, and that's probably where most of my AI experience and discourse will come from. I'll be relating it a lot back to the camera systems that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. And we can go further into that later in the podcast, obviously. I appreciate you guys having me here, and I'm excited to talk about automation and Keyence more as a whole, as well as the impact we've had and the effects of AI.
No, I appreciate that, and Simon, where maybe the same question to you. I mean, the background, how you got into AI and kind of a little bit about the company.
Absolutely. And first off, thank you both for having me here today. It's a great honor. It was really nice to meet you as well. So our big goal with the Friday is we have an AI library, and our big goal is democratizing these applied AI tools that companies have typically, due to a lack of talent or due to a lack of resources, have not had access to. And so our goal is to create a library of various AI models, all designed to help an organization gain a total view of their business health, prediction models, pattern recognition models, anything that they would need to succeed in this ever-changing global economy.
That's great. Thomas, so where are you seeing AI vision or inspection tools deliver immediate tangible value on the shop floor for a manufacturer, say like Milbank?
Yeah. So again, I'm going to be talking more so from the machine vision side of experience. So to start, I mean, since we cover that large wheel of products, AI is going to be utilized differently for each one. The cool and interesting part about machine vision is it's applicable to any industry. Where AI is going to play a part in that is initially with your machine vision setup before AI existed, we were doing a lot of rule-based tools is what we call them. So that means you actually go in and set the parameters for the system. And that's going to be same for a lot of our different technologies that didn't have AI before. Now with allowing AI to come in and simplify that process, you can teach off of a set of images or a set of data, and then those parameters can be set automatically through the AI tools. This is going to help a lot with the efficiency of getting those from your pilot system to actually implementing them into production. Now, whether that is a system that is used in production or used in a lab setting is up to you. But then we can take that data and kind of analyze those results, outputting that to some kind of AI resource, whether that is something that FridAI can do on their end or another AI company can utilize.
No, that's just fascinating. Simon, I mean, where are the manufacturers that you're working with, getting the cleanest wins from AI models today?
That's a great question. We have been blessed to work with all sorts of manufacturers and lots of different industries, lots of different sizes, lots of different product types. And to really it kind of changes depending on the setting. Our big goal, and where we're seeing a lot of our big successes, is educated decision making. And so now that businesses are able to utilize these models, utilize these tools, they're able to actually understand the direction that they're heading. They're able to understand different micro trends and different seasonalities inside their data they might not have previously noticed, or that their own biases might have been blinding them from. And so just the ability and the confidence to go forward, that they understand the mathematics, they understand the logic of now how they can actually make good, strong decisions moving forward.
And Adrienne, I mean, based on, Thomas and Simon's comments here, I mean, does this align with what you're seeing internally at Milbank?
It absolutely does. So Milbank has been using Keyence inspection equipment for a while. We've had, a variety, I think, of your models out on the plant floor. And when, I think it was you, Thomas, came in and introduced us to the latest and greatest AI-enabled equipment, we immediately saw a couple applications. So we have them currently out on our breaker line and out on the test switch line. And we chose those two areas in particular because they're our most regulated or utility specified. You think about the test switches, the way they're set up now, we have hundreds of different variations of colors and just utility specs that we have to meet. And when I think of our breakers, we picked that particular production side because obviously they're the most UL regulated and tested, and the Keyence equipment can pick up if there's a missing label. Obviously, that's a huge safety issue. When I think about the test switches, that's high turnover type of product where it's a heavy lift for the team, and it just helps us identify if we have any, non-conformances on the plant, on the production line, right away. And you can really spot that, obviously, with the equipment. And then when I think of the FridAI side of how it can apply, so we met Simon at, the Missouri Enterprise, and they were kind of launching their platform, and immediately could pick up on how we could quickly, I'll say quickly because we don't have all that staff that knows code, to adapt to their models, the library. When we talk about, some business processes, Ryan and I work a lot on our SOP process and our forecasting models. And for past 3 years, our sales have been not really predictable. We'll call it that. We haven't
Not a lot of seasonality.
Not a lot of seasonality. Little to no inventory. And it was hard to forecast. So that tool is one that when I first saw it and there's many more in the library, but that was the first one, and that's their sort of intro launch one to get started with, was a quick win for us. And so, yeah, it was easily applicable to what we do, and I think probably what a lot of people do in our positions.
Okay. No, good stuff. Maybe just kind of an open question. I don't know who wants to take it on, but when teams or companies are early in AI adoption, what matters most before AI delivers, value to the company? And I'll just say, for me specifically, I just remember hearing ChatGPT come up in the news one day, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I download the app, and that was kind of my first introduction into AI, right? And I would say, I'm just a simple salesperson. I'd say I'm probably the majority of people out there. And so, it always kind of seems like a mystery to me, AI in general. I'm not living it every day like you guys are. And so, for a company like Milbank or, teams that are using it, again, kind of what matters most before AI delivers value to a company or a team? I don't know who wants to pick that up.
I can dive right in if that's all good with everybody.
Absolutely.
I would say, we have been in the AI space since 2019. So even before ChatGPT launched their transformer that led us into this large language model AI conversation that we're all kind of in right now. And the most important thing that we've really run across through all of our experiences is absolutely the buy-in of all of the employees and all of the shareholders and stockholders. Without that, there's always the fear of replacement. We at FridAI are big believers in AI augmentation, that AI should never replace the human in any capacity, but how can we enhance the human by giving them these tools, this knowledge, this access to this information, so that way they can enhance every part of their self, become more efficient, become more, and care about that mental well-being, all of those pieces. And so even before you kind of dive into that data readiness, that data cleanliness, making sure everybody on board understands what your end goal is and getting that buy-in on all sectors. So that way everybody has a common goal, common direction, and then you can start assigning certain tasks, whether that be cleaning data, whether that be refining the process or finding that question you all really need to answer.
Thomas, do you have anything to add on to what Simon was saying there?
Yeah, I'll probably add on to and emphasize really each of his points on that from the vision perspective. So when you're setting up that piece of equipment, you want to have good samples and bad samples of the parts you're trying to inspect. So basically, you're going to want to have data ready to present to the camera to build that data set off of. Again, previously, everything was rule-based and based off of a single image. This opened up a lot of issues for variance in manufacturing because manufacturing isn't a perfect environment. Obviously, you're going to see lighting changes. Operators are going to handle materials differently. The environment may be dirty, dusty. A lot of factors can play in how that inspection was previously done. When you're using the vision system with AI now, it's based off of a data set of images. So we allow that system to be more flexible in its solution to deal with those variances. In order to do that, we need plenty of data to work with. The nice part about our system is it only needs to be based off of, let's say, like 10 to 40 images versus some other deeper learning models require thousands of images. So again, helps you guys get from that pilot system to production much faster and much more efficiently. You also want some process clarity on that side as well. You want to understand what you're going to do, not only with the data you're collecting, but with the result that you're getting from the system. If I'm saying this is a bad part, what are you guys going to do with that if it's bad? Is an operator going to stand out there and make the correction on the spot? Or are we going to put that into a bin and put that somewhere farther in the process where things get repaired? Those are decisions and conversations you should be having with your team on the floor so then they can understand what to do with the result. And then with the data that we're collecting, you should probably organize some kind of ownership with that of, we've got all this data. What's going to make it actionable data? What's going to allow us to take this data and get an actual result from it in order to reach the outcome we're wanting? So clearly defining the role of that system, understanding what you're doing with that result, and then having different groups take ownership of that system. Maybe one person on the quality side understanding the data, and then another person on the floor actually understanding what they're looking at so they can make that correction or repair for that material is going to be essential in adopting that AI for the system.
No, it makes sense. What do you think, Thomas? What do you think slows AI adoption more in manufacturing? Do you think it's the technology or do you think it's the human factor?
Could be a little bit of both. Obviously you're going to have your hardware limitations based on the processor that you have for the system. The more data you teach a system, the longer it's going to take to learn that. Again, fortunately, we're able to do that with a smaller amount of data, but there are going to be certain applications you'll run into where you'll need more data, which means you'll either need more processing or more RAM for that system. As for the human adoption aspect, you want your people dealing with the system to be aware of what it is and what it's doing. Because if they don't know what it's doing, they could lose trust with that system, and they could actually be working against it than benefiting from it. If you have just a camera above someone and supposed to be looking at the product, they don't know what that camera's doing. They may make it more difficult for that camera to perform its job. Where if you help them understand what the goal of that camera is and that it's actually there to help them with that process, they're going to work with it and probably make you aware of any problems if that system is running into issues. If you do see an error or if it's not doing its job correctly, they can relay that information back to you in order for someone to correct that or make it more available for that system to collect data that you can then use in the future.
Do you see that a lot where a company adopts some sort of camera system and they don't have the training for the staff, and then it just fails? It just doesn't work because the time wasn't invested into training the workers?
Yes, all the time. So depending on the amount of ownership they give people, if they just put a camera out there and people aren't super aware of what it's doing, there are certain locations where they end up blocking the camera out or knocking it down because they might see it as more of like a surveillance system or something disrupting their process and causing them headaches because it is stopping the production line. And their whole goal is to keep that process going. Where other places, if they're aware of it and they have the process in place and the resources in place to deal with that, they can make a call and say, hey, this system is stopping our machine. Can someone come out here and fix it? Or I think we're going to have an issue with this machine when you guys make this process change because of X, Y, and Z. And so if you can enable that communication between those groups, that's going to be really helpful in adopting AI.
No, that's a good point. Yeah.
Can I touch on that?
Absolutely.
Just to bring it into Milbank, where we set up the inspection equipment on the switch line, it was really important for us to bring the production engineers into that conversation along with the supervisors for that area, because you're right, Thomas, like they start thinking they're getting watched on performance, and it's really meant to augment, the work that they do. And I'll just say, I think there was a little, hesitancy out in the beginning, but, they're getting more used to it, and I think the buy-in from the employees when you install a piece of equipment like that is super important, because they can take ownership of that process step on the assembly line, and it really does enhance their job satisfaction because they can spot it more, and now they're kind of part of the solution, which is neat to see.
No, it makes sense. It's kind of like the first time in launching a CRM for a sales team,
Oh yeah, you need a lot of buy-in on that.
Yes, absolutely. Simon, from Friday's point of view, how does this, the technology versus human factors, how does that, affect you?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing is, especially initially, is almost the fear of it. And not even the fear of like, I'm scared of this, the fear almost in an overwhelming sense. Because a lot of these manufacturers we interact with, they have these processes that they have done for years. This is something that Grandpa did when he started the company. This is something that Dad does now, and that eventually son will likely do in the future as well. And, they have their way. They have, this is how we're going to forecast because it's how we've always forecasted. And now there's this new technology that can take something that you've had a whole team spending weeks on and can do in 60 seconds. And there's just that overwhelming fear of what is this new technology that's right in front of me? How do I react to this? And letting users know that it's not necessarily like, this is not replacing you. It's now you have this knowledge and you have this ability to basically guide your decision making, and you have all this extra time that you can now reallocate into different areas on acting on this new intelligence. And so once they build that trust in the model and they understand what goes into it, how it works, because our big thing at Friday in the library is explainability. We don't want users to trust anything with AI completely blindly. We walk them through, here's the math of how you got here, here's how your data was cleaned, here's how we basically got from your CSV file with all of your data to this end result forecast right here. And we'll walk you through every step of the way. That way you as the user can, if you have to report to management or if you're guiding your strategic thinking and decision making off of it, you can understand this is how we got to where we're at, and this is the way that our model is predicting will go in the future. And so this is the decision making and the guidance that we can use to actually kind of act on that. As it relates to integrating these AI into workflows, I will be the first to say AI can be very overwhelming. There are all sorts of different models out there. Generative AI is really only scratching the surface. We haven't even got into like pattern detection, prediction, business health, stability. There are all so many different directions. And we at the FridAI Library, we kind of like to frame AI, and especially from a problem-solving, question-answering point of view. What is a question that AI can answer for you? Whether that be business forecasting, stability, whether that be what are my customers' normal buying cadences, so that way we can basically channel our marketing towards that a little bit better. All designed towards getting the user to gain that trust and view AI almost as not necessarily as an auditor or a decision maker, but as that buddy that's helping you every step of this way to make you make better decisions.
And I'll add on that one too. My team is working with the FridAI licenses, and I think we're on our second month. We've really just started, right? Just scratching the surface. And what I've seen from my team, who are not developers, they're not traditional code writers, they didn't go to school to be a software engineer, are running models successfully, coming out with visuals on the other end. So what their platform is really doing well is breaking it down, making it very user-friendly and accessible to the non-coder type of AI person who's not familiar with machine learning, who doesn't know how to write that code. So in 2 months, we're successfully running, seasonality predictive models.
So Adrienne, when teams or your team in particular, are getting ready for the AI adoption and working with, like these two companies here, what matters most, before you implement this? Like, how do you get the most value out of it?
Right. So I think, Thomas talked about, even before you get data readiness, right? We have pretty good data here at Milbank. We've launched a big ERP system. We're constantly talking about the cleanliness of our data, but it's not always perfect, right? We're still a work in process. We do have good processes in place at Milbank. We got a lot of work instructions, so that part is good. But getting to that perfect data, mindset is, I think, still a struggle, at Milbank, or it can be at times. Every day we're getting better, but we talk a lot about just data cleanliness. So I think getting started, that has to be one of your focuses, especially when you're looking at, putting historical data into a system and expecting different outcomes. So I think that one is definitely one that you've got to be mindful about before you jump into it, because if it's garbage in, it's garbage out. I'm not the author of that statement. I think we've all heard it. But you've got to have good data to get good outcomes. And I think when I think about our first year in this department and, getting the word out about Copilot and just how to use it in everyday use, is what AI can do and what it can't do. I think there's a lot of big expectations that AI is going to solve all the problems or take over everything. And really it's, feeding off of what the user is, inputting into it. So I think that's one that really you got to think about before you get started, is right-sizing your expectations on AI. And then when I think about the Keyence equipment too, when we first, and it wasn't your camera, right? It was someone launching this AI-enabled, well, it couldn't pick up colors. It couldn't distinguish, colors with the equipment. It couldn't, different orientations. I know yours picks up really well on, right? It can tell if you don't have it exactly perfect into a square. It can tell still and learn as you teach it what good and bad looks like through that process. So, I think you have to kind of be mindful about what the AI equipment can do, because it's not a perfect system.
Yeah. So Thomas, Simon, if you're a company like Milbank or, another, smaller company, right, that's a manufacturing company that doesn't have this huge, robust, data team, and we have a data team. We've had it for over a year now, but, we don't have, like, to your point, we don't have coders, we don't have software engineers, stuff like that. What would be your the first thing to do? Well, if you haven't implemented, we sell our products, a lot of other manufacturers do, or in our space, the electrical industry, right? We have reps, that will listen to this podcast. We have distributors, who distribute our product that'll listen to it. And then we have contractors out there as well. So, I mean, if you're an electrical contractor, you're a distributor that's selling our product, what are some of the first things you would be doing in those spaces to implement AI? I mean, they probably have a $20 a month subscription to ChatGPT, or maybe have a Copilot add-on, but like, what would be the first steps that could have an immediate impact to their business? And maybe we'll start with you, Thomas, and then go to Simon on that.
Yeah. So I would recommend first thing to do is to have like a clear outlined goal for what you're trying to achieve with the system. Because if you don't know what you're going to do with it, then it's going to be hard to implement that very well. So if you can identify the problem and then what you want that system to do in order to solve it, understand where you're going to place that system. Because at the end of the day, it is a camera, so it has to be able to see the problem in order to solve it. And if you understand that, get the operators on board, like we were talking about earlier, and getting that discourse and conversation started among people within the company, I think that's a great first step for the system. And then for the actual teaching of the system is to have samples ready and prepared to present to that. So then you can build out onto that data set so then it can function properly in either making its judgment on good and bad, or collecting the data that you want to see that you're going to use to impact future decisions for your process. At the end of the day, the camera is going to be more of a containment or help with efficiency for your problems. It's not going to solve the root cause of it. And so if you've got that clearly outlined, you got the data, and the camera's collecting more and more data, then you can go back and use that to go ahead and find the root cause and then fix those problems where they started.
And Simon, I mean, from Friday's point of view, I mean, how do you take that question, I guess?
Oh, absolutely. Planning is everything. We do a lot of AI road mapping with a lot of different organizations, and it is really easy to get excited about AI and you want to dive right in, but we always encourage, all of our users, all of the people we interact with, have that plan in place. We often we have a red light, green light system that we do. So we go around, throughout my collegiate and professional career, had the ability to interact with a lot of different business intelligence departments. And one of the things that they do is not every model you make doesn't have to be a revenue generator. What they do is they go department by department and they ask questions like, if you had an answer to this question and you could basically have the intelligence to act on that question, it would change everything about everything. And so what we always encourage everybody to do first is when you're making that plan, what are the questions that different areas of your business need answered? What are the questions that they ask themselves every single day, whether that be, your marketing team and different customers, whether that be your logistics team and the supply chain. Our big goal is to identify what are our big pain points and choke points in our organization and our business. That way we can after we've done that, we can take a big look at what data do we actually have as a company. All of our green light questions that we asked are questions that we have data to that we can act on right now. We don't have to change anything. We can jump right into this. Our yellow ones are maybe we have this data, but it's not formatted properly. We need to clean it or we need to start getting it ready, but it's something that could be in the picture. And then our red light questions are questions that we don't have the data for right now or the ability to collect that data. We need something from a third party. So that's not a question we can answer at the moment. But just having that list of questions, having that understanding of what data you actually have and thinking of it from a question point of view instead of necessarily a total overview of all of your data really can help you start small and figure out those little different directions that you as an organization can go with. Because once you do one, it becomes so much easier to answer question number 2 and question number 3 and so on and so forth.
That makes sense. And Adrienne, having deployed the first AI, into Milbank, I mean, what are some things you would do first? And then I guess to what are things to avoid?
And I'll build off both of what they said, because that's exactly what we did. We really looked at our process. If it was on their business side, if it was around the supply or demand planning side of our business. I mentioned the S&OP process. But we've been discussing that a lot here at Milbank, as if we're rebuilding our inventory or we're getting better delivery from our suppliers, if we are working around a sales plan or sales growth strategy. So a lot of those plans and business processes are an area that AI has a place in. And then of course with manufacturing, it's all, process driven out on the production floor. So I think you look at, and our approach to it was, where could a little automation help in making a decision point? So when I think about the cameras out on the breaker line, that line flexes a lot. Sometimes people move into other areas and, not that they lose their training, but they might lose their edge sometimes. So how do we keep that sharp and avoid any kind of dullness and give them a piece of equipment that helps them, spot a problem earlier or faster or quicker, or be able to report it or collect over a period of time to draw different decisions. So, so that's exactly how we approached it as well, because you can't boil the ocean. And I think I would put that in my what to avoid bullet there is you have to really, I think the more narrow of the scope that you identify. And we also took the approach of making it a trial versus full implementation, right? We want to be able to scale, but we have to prove that it's a win first, because I think that's what anyone who's looking at AI is like, how do we get our first win with AI? How do we get people to trust in whatever that we're, presenting? Because if they don't believe in it, they're not going to use it. They're not going to adopt a new piece of inspection equipment if they fear that it's, either surveillance, did you use that word, Thomas, or, watching performance. No, it's there to enhance their current job description. And possibly free them up to do something even bigger or better. So I think for avoiding is keeping it a fairly narrow scope, starting small. If it works, build and grow from it.
Nuts. And that all kind of just leads into, I guess, as we kind of wrap this up, again, not knowing a lot about AI other than using it to check emails and stuff. I'm definitely a beginner when it comes to AI, right? I think back and I say, okay, 20 years ago, we barely had a smartphone. And I don't think the iPad had even been invented yet, right? So from today, it's 2026, we sit here, if you, from a FridAI AI perspective, where are we at 20 years from today?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I could go full nerd and really dream out on you, but
let's hear it.
I will keep it a little more grounded because, we are seeing automation and augmentation all over the globe. Here in the United States, AI has lagged a little slower compared to some of our foreign competitors, and they are kind of setting the tone of the future of this technology and especially integrating it inside manufacturing. And once you as an organization can have total control and total understanding of all of your data, you can basically create what's called a data lake. You can see you have full knowledge of your system as an organization. You can begin creating all of these different processes, answering all of these different questions in a way that can not only allow your business to operate at pure 100% efficiency, but you can start gaining incremental efficiencies on top of that. So that way you can start seeing growth through educated intelligence, and that all starts with your data.
Can I build on something Simon said?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's really interesting, and I hope Milbank isn't the only company that's in this position. But when we first looked at our data and where we collect, we do not have a data lake model in our current state, right? We have lots of puddles, maybe a pond, but the concept of the lake is in our long-term, strategy. But getting there is, it's sometimes daunting for a almost 100-year-old manufacturer that is used to collecting data on spreadsheets or, we have advanced pretty quickly with our new ERP system. We have a lot more data than we did, prior to 2022. But getting there is, it takes work. It takes a strategy behind it because, for us, I think we look at our future manufacturing state as collecting a lot more data on the plant floor than we do today. And it takes discipline, takes data, just more data points to really get to that big lake type of thought, right? And that's not even, and it's also connecting all the other places that we collect data at today. Because right now it's very, broken up right now. So I think at least for Milbank, a future state, I don't know, you probably have thoughts too, but, there's going to be lots of data, a lot more data collection points on the plant floor. We keep investing in automation at Milbank, which does help us, not have to make those such manual steps, because I think that's where, we don't have a laptop on every work center out there today, so collecting data can be challenging.
Yeah, and again, I'm just a simple salesperson, so it's hard. I mean, again, I'm sitting in college 20 years ago with I think maybe a BlackBerry Pearl, right? There was no Googling an answer, right? I can only imagine going to college today and asking Copilot a question and just have an instant. It's almost like you don't have to learn anything today, right? It's just right there in your hand. You just kind of get the instant answer and you forget about it, right? So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'd say the way potentially you're getting electricity 20 years from today is going to be completely different. I mean, that's one industry that has not changed really for 100 years. I mean, let's be honest, right? But with data centers in general and the amount of energy that these data centers are requiring, it'll be interesting to see just how that, I mean, not even the technology that it brings us and the efficiencies it brings us, but the infrastructure of having data centers, I mean, directly affects our company, right? And how that's supported. And so I think from a sales perspective, that's kind of what I'm looking at it twofold, right? Like, how can I make my team more efficient, from a customer service perspective, from an engineering perspective, but then also, like, how are we supporting the infrastructure rollout of data centers? Like, how can we play a part of it? And then also, there's data generation occurring at these data centers, and I'm waiting for that battle between utilities and these data centers to occur. So it's going to happen, I'm sure. So, yeah, it's interesting. I think it's fascinating. You and I were talking earlier, about, just cars and all the technology in the cars. And I'm like, I'd love to have just a basic car, but I would still like to have a backup camera, but I would still like to have Apple CarPlay. And there's just things that, you can introduce this technology and you just get used to it, and you just keep using it every single day, and you can't imagine life without it. And I mean, to be honest, if I couldn't drive into work and ask Copilot, like, what does my calendar look like today? I've become very used to doing that. I mean, I do that every morning. I'd probably be lost. And so it's like, it's stuck. It's here. It's not going away. And, Thomas, I mean, you're obviously, dealing with it from the manufacturing, like kind of more of a infrastructure, side of it with the cameras. And I'm not even sure what else your company does. I know that's one of the things we're using. But yeah, I mean, 20 years from today, how do you see that equipment, playing a part in manufacturing? I mean, if it's a camera today, what is it tomorrow? I mean, we know the robots. I mean, we know all this stuff is coming. I mean, I saw a tweet from, I think this morning, from Elon, and he was like, because they got rid of like the Model X and they got rid of another vehicle, and he was showcasing this new robot and saying, well, that's taken the place of these two vehicles, right? So, I mean, we know that's happening. I don't think anybody's, going to be surprised when you have a robot in a factory or something, right? I mean, I think we all know 20 years from now, in the future, something like that's going to happen. But I mean, people are still going to be a part of it. So I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are on that,
Yeah. Yeah, so from like a machinery and process standpoint, you're probably going to see very much improved efficiency with those machines. You're going to see incredible accuracies taken with a lot of this automation equipment in line at very high speeds. We're going to be able to handle much higher production rates, but also a lot more variance in what people are producing for that. And then obviously, like you mentioned, the implementation of robots. Now, a lot of manufacturing facilities today currently use robots, but 20 years from now, that's going to look a lot different. As you mentioned, more of like the Elon style robots than just the robotic arms that a lot of people are using for picking and placing operations. And I feel like, to hone in on a specific application for robots, right now they're great at picking uniform objects being presented in a certain orientation. Soon we're going to be able to pick those in a much more unorganized orientation for a much higher variance. Because right now we've implemented certain bin picking systems already at Keyence that are able to do stuff like that, but there still has to be some uniformity. In the future, I guess like you can kind of do anything from a picking perspective on that side. And then with all of that being said, on the vision side, you're going to see a lot of faster processing. You're going to need less data sets, or there's going to be many more pre-built libraries. So every tool on the vision system is going to be AI, and simple implementation of probably just click and drop it in, and then your application's solved. So it's going to be much faster to get these systems up into production, and then hopefully allow those operators to utilize the resources they get from that to, again, either locate the cause of that problem or be utilized somewhere else on the plant where they can make an efficient result from said data.
No, I think this is great. And Adrienne, I appreciate you, having two awesome, Simon and Thomas, two awesome, guests here. As we wrap this up, Adrienne, do you have any final words? And we'll give you guys a chance as well. But Adrienne, do you have any final words for us from a Milbank's perspective?
From a Milbank's perspective, the misconception is that AI is maybe unapproachable. And we hope to debunk that, right? We want everyone to be able to participate in it, and that it's extremely accessible and it's not going anywhere, right? So it will become, I think when you ask that question of, what's 20 years ahead, AI is going to be, not a if, it's a always in some form of capacity. If it's just moving things quicker, if it's just making productivity faster, it's going to be a part of our future. So, the earlier embrace, the better. I like to hear that you're using Copilot every day.
I do.
Make your schedule.
I'm like 50-50 on ChatGPT and Copilot. I know I have to use Copilot for work stuff,
Copilot,
but me and ChatGPT are pretty close. So,
it was still amazing when we were doing our trainings across, our company last year. It was a lot of people's first time working with a large language model. And I think the first ChatGPTs came out in 2022, I believe, for that model. So, I think the adoption is still kind of maybe slow, but making sure that it's approachable, that's a message, our department tries to keep out there, and that it's within reach. And I think the other thing to just really keep in mind is it's not replacing the human, right? And it's as good as the information you're putting into it is what you're getting out. It's really, the intention is to elevate the productivity, at least speaking for a manufacturer, right? Is we want to enhance, because we think happy employees are Milbank employees, and they want to stay and they want to work with us because we are advancing the tools that they have, making them more efficient. And when you think about sales, I think there's a lot of applications for AI, learning about trends and patterns, the way people order.
Market analysis.
Market analysis. So I think it's really the thought I'd want to leave, I think, with this podcast is that its intention is to elevate and not get in anybody's way. So, and more time to do other things, more productive things. So if you don't have to spend a few hours in that Franklin, because I know you're a Franklin planner.
I stopped using it.
Okay.
Just so you know. I broke myself from
Ryan
it.
and I both like Franklin planners, but if you think about how much time when you're writing or planning and
duplicating it to the next
carrying it over, and you can use something just like a Copilot chat, just think about all that free time we've given ourselves to do something else. So, I think elevating the human productivity is really my closing thought.
Simon?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, thank you both for having me here today. Really, really appreciate it. As it relates to closing thoughts, one of the things that we really like to tell manufacturers and honestly any industry and any business, you're closer than what you think. You have more data than what you think you do. You, as an organization, I guarantee are data rich from all these different processes and procedures that you've just collected slowly over time. And I know that initial step, it can seem so overwhelming and you have so much data and you don't necessarily know what to do. But just it always a reminder to take that deep breath, really kind of take a slow approach, understand that you can do this, you do have the data to do this. And even though that, you're going to get excited, you're going to get overwhelmed, you're going to feel all of these different things as it relates to these new AI tools, understand that a calm and cool approach is going to allow you to do anything and everything you'd like to do with that data.
It's fantastic. And thanks again for driving up for this. I appreciate it. Thomas, any last thoughts for us here?
I'll emphasize the point of being, prepared for these systems. I mean, AI is not a silver bullet for your problems, at least not today. Maybe 20 years from now it will be. But you still have to have that plan and procedure in place to implement those systems and make them become successful and efficient. And in order to do that, you just got to go back and listen to this podcast again and talk about those steps with your team and all those points we mentioned earlier to get the most out of that technology.
Well, thank you guys again for coming in for this. I really appreciate it. Thanks for driving up. Thanks for coming over. Adrienne, thanks for putting this together. Really appreciate it. I think I have learned a lot from this. I use it, but I'm definitely a novice in it. And I think a lot of our listeners are probably in that same space. So really appreciate it, guys, for coming out. And Adrienne, thanks to all the listeners for listening to the Unmetered podcast. Obviously, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Unmetered podcast presented by Milbank. Unmetered is hosted by Ryan Skinner and executive produced and edited by Sean McElveen, supported by the Milbank Manufacturing Marketing Team. Make sure to follow us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. The Milbank podcast and all related content are provided for general informational and educational purposes only. The content is intended to share information about Milbank products, industry trends, and related topics and should not be construed as professional engineering, technical, electrical, safety, or installation advice. Always consult qualified professionals and refer to applicable codes, standards, and manufacturer specifications before selecting, installing, or using any products.